Hey there, Internet! Welcome to the Hard On Gear channel, where I discuss and review my used and abused knives and gear so that you know what is or isn't worth spending your hard-earned money on. Quick update video for you. After it's been 3.5, 4 weeks since I have had the Benchmade 940. About 3 weeks, yes. So I wasn't sure at first. I ordered it because I needed to get a Benchmade. I wanted to know what it was like. I wanted something to compare the ball bearing lock of the Manix 2 out because the axis lock is so popular. Benchmades are so popular. 940s, especially the 940-2s, are so popular. So it's a great knife to get a whole bunch of different things for me, as well as for what you'll see in the upcoming comparison video between these two knives. We got black G10, S30V blade steel, a very similar function in the locks between the ball bearing and the axis lock. Different knives, different sizes. One's certainly a little fancier, one's certainly a little more rugged and work-centric, but nonetheless, the Benchmade 940 I feel was a very, very good pick for my collection, and it also was a knife that I was very interested in getting. Was pretty close to making the top pick over the Manix 2 and the PM2, but the Manix 2 ended up winning that role for the EDC pocket knife. Well, if you haven't, you can check out the original unboxing video of this, where I was a little bit underwhelmed, I guess. It was pretty nice coming out of the box. The size surprised me. I kind of felt like it was going to be a little bigger, but if you know my knife selection and collection at all, I tend to have larger knives. So it did surprise me a little bit. Not to the point where I was like, oh no, what did I just spend 220 bucks on? But the biggest issue was, if you check back, the axis lock was sticking. So when I went to deploy this knife, especially if I really, with a thud, went to deploy it, and you'll still see a little bit here, but there was a little bit of extra retention in the ball bearing, in the axis lock. So, and you can check the YouTube. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. He took the time to take this knife apart, put it back together over and over and over and over again, and he figured out the problem, and there needs to be a little bit of sanding in the upper portion of that that cutout portion of the part where the axis lock slides in. So right at the top of that spring, where that spring holds the axis lock, that's a little tight. So if you flick it open with some authority, tend to bind up a little bit at the top. Other than that, if you're opening it normal now, it's broken in, and I did a lot of aggressive opening and working in and breaking in of the axis lock. The first week I had this, to the point where I kind of have it there already, I wore kind of almost like a groove into my thumbnail where I had to stop and deploy it with my pinky or other ways. And then I've also worn that fingernail down, just trying to work on the spider flick or the reverse flick. This thing did not want a reverse flick. I feel like I did get a little bit of a Benchmade quality control issue with this, not just because of the axis lock stick, but it doesn't really deploy very well via the axis lock. Well, there, I got it there, but it tends to want to bounce open and close a lot. I know that's partially my fault. It's a timing issue, but with the Manix 2, there really wasn't much of an issue. It took a lot more to break this knife in. The coil springs got quite a bit more give behind it, and it took a little bit more to get this thing running smoothly to the point where you can just give that a Spidey flick and watch it fly open. But after a few weeks, no issues with this whatsoever. With this, and I guess what I was showing you is the axis lock or the ball bearing lock opens and closes, really no issue. Like, it's fairly smooth. And the timing, I mean, if you open it and close it and don't release the lock, it might not stay, but it's pretty easy to time this like that. The axis lock deploys fine with the thumb, deploys fine with the middle finger if you put your finger in the right place. There's not a lot of room for your middle finger behind here, so if you put it on the axis lock, it stops the deployment halfway through. But if you're just in the back of the axis lock or just back and above it, it'll work just fine. But yeah, really gotta be careful not to throw that out of my hand when I axis lock deploy. And it's getting better, and as I break it in, it's getting closer to, I won't say perfection, but it's getting closer to like 80 or 90% success rate. But yeah, it's still just not consistent enough. So there's maybe the one issue with it. Other than that, for a knife that's quite a bit smaller and lighter than I'm used to carrying, and this is really light. I've been throwing this in my gym shorts a little bit more if I'm going down to my basement dojo gym to mess around. It's very light. I don't notice it. The Manix 2, I've squatted with that thing plenty, but this thing here is just about invisible in my pocket. So if I'm running, I feel like this is going to be maybe a go-to knife, at least, or not, maybe not running, because hell, if I lose that thing on a trail or something, I'm going to be super pissed. So maybe the Rat number 2 or Model 2 will be my running knife. But like I've talked about in other videos, I kind of like having one knife for every purpose, so that I'm just, if I'm in the moment of going for a jog, which I hate doing so much, I'm always going to have the same knife on me, so it's always going to be gross motor movements instead of fine motor mechanical movements if I have to stop and deploy something in an emergency situation. Because in an emergency, if I've never deployed the knife that I'm carrying in those clothes, I'm going to have to think about it. And when you think about it, you panic, and when you panic, you drop your knife or do something stupid and die. Or whatever's going to happen to you. Put that over there. So yeah, I think what I'll end up using this for is what I've been using it for, which is a backup knife slash plaything slash a fidget knife at home, because this is quite a bit quieter. So if I'm at work or anywhere where I don't want to bother somebody with my fidgeting, the Recon 1, I mean, yeah, fidget with this quietly and don't disturb anybody. Not gonna happen. That's got a thunk to it, right? I'm sure that's coming through loud and clear on the camera. Manix 2, not too bad, but it's got quite a good snap. And even when it closes, that detent, not too loud, but there's a little click. So even as quiet as you want to be with this, as long as you're not, if you're holding the Manix to the ball bearing lock, you can get it going pretty smooth, but there's a lot of weight and it thunks a little bit. With this, I can just very quietly sit here and fidget with this without disturbing anybody. And even if it opens loudly, if I reverse flick it and it thunks, oh, see, my thumb got in the way. Helps for the stealth though. But not too bad, right? Compared to pretty loud snap. So, and if I want to do this stealthily, like this is a much stealthier knife if for some reason you were doing stealthy things. If you kind of hold the axis lock while you open that, pretty quiet. So I'll just sit here and fidget with this for hours. So I've gotten quite a bit of time playing around with this. It's pretty broken in already. It's not the most the smoothest Benchmade compared to what I have seen a lot of people in their videos, but I have a feeling over time it's only going to get better. I put a little bit of lube in the pivot and that helped quite a bit. It's probably mostly worn down again now to where I could lube it up again and it could use a little bit, but I don't like having to lube my knives up every freaking week to get them to perform like this. And really, with the amount of dirt and crud and tree needles and stuff that I get in my knife pivots, I'm never going to have buttery smooth action in my knives, and that's just the way it is. So, but this really, I mean, it's growing on me by the week, and I did wear this in my primary slot for 2 weeks when I first got it, and it didn't take long for this thing to start becoming a little more familiar in my hand. I've used this quite a bit actually eating and cooking, cutting steak and different things, and a little bit of food prep. But for the most part, I've been using this as my steak knife. Why? Because it's not my actual EDC. I want to keep this thing razor sharp most of the time, or fairly sharp. I don't know if it's still... Yeah, okay, yeah, still fairly hair-popping sharp. Because I try to keep it sharp and then strop it up for when I need something that can cut really well. Not that this thing isn't still, probably not razor, because it's hit quite a few ceramic plates and stuff, just being that I've been using it for, again, a kitchen knife slash a steak knife slash a dinner knife. So I can now say with a fair amount of confidence, this knife will only continue to grow on me. It's not going to be a safe queen. It will be a knife that I can throw into my pocket when I'm going to a fancier event, which I don't, maybe once every 5 years. But it's something that I'll have a lot of familiarity with, playing around with, so I won't fumble it too much. It's not going to be as smooth as the Manix 2. I'm not going to miss this too often. That needs a lube job. But this here is going to be an excellent knife for any kind of things where I want something a little lighter, a little smaller, maybe a little bit fancier, a little less cumbersome. Sorry, knives. But I don't think it's going to replace this anytime soon as my main EDC. I like to keep the same thing in my same rotation all the time. This thing has been in my backup pocket quite a bit, or at least in a spare, but I've been just keeping this very handy to do some comparisons between these two knives. No complaints now, other than, again, just the axis lock deployment could be a little bit better. Maybe over time that'll improve. I'll be doing a full thorough review on this here before too long, going over all the specs and all the materials and everything. Differences between the 940-2 and the original 940, the aluminum version. But great knife. My first impression of Benchmade, my first Benchmade knife. It's not perfect, and I think what it is probably pretty accurate compared to most Benchmade experiences in the last 5-10 years, which is it's pretty damn good, but the quality control probably could have been a little bit better on it. That's supposed to be an issue that's dissolving as time goes on, and Benchmade's supposed to be getting on top of it. I don't want to say it's a bad sign for me for Benchmade. I think it's one of those things. It is what it is. You don't expect to get a cold steel and have a quality control issue, but you expect it not to be as fancy or well finished or refined as something a little bit more high end. What you expect with a Benchmade is something a little more high end with great action, great everything, like the fit, quality, finish, everything. For the most part, you can tell they put a lot of work into it, but the quality control is going to be lacking. The Spyderco is going to be more big and bulky and not as pretty with that hole, but the functionality it's going to be at 11 out of 10. So pick your trade-off. There's a pro and con to every knife. For me, the Benchmade 940 is much more pro than con. It's certainly, I was pretty scared after that unboxing. Those feelings dissolved quite quickly, and I can say now without any doubt that I do love the 940-2 from Benchmade. So keep an eye out for that review when it comes out. Check out the reviews for these knives if they're out, and let me know what you think and what you think of your Benchmade 940s, and if you have any Benchmades you recommend me purchasing other than this one, or that would make some good comparisons to this guy. I think the Benchmade Griptilian is going to be the next one that I pick up. First knife giveaway will be happening at 1,000 subscribers, so hit that subscribe button to help me get there. I'll be giving away some kind of a fixed blade or folding knife that meets the H.O.G standards of toughness, durability, reliability, and keep an eye out for that. For now, this is the Hard On Gear channel signing off.